I'm so happy, oh, happy-go-lucky me. I just go my way, living every day. I don't worry, worrying don't agree. Things that bother you never bother me.
Vera Speaks Out.
Things that bother you never bother me. I feel happy and fine, ha-ha. Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time. Having got a lot, I don't need a lot, coffee's only a dime. Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time. Just take it from me, I'm just as free as any daughter. I do what I like, just what I like, and how I love it. I'm right here to say when I'm old and grey, I'll be right in my prime. Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time.
Can you believe it, fellow Canadians? Here I am on the cobblestone streets of Florence, Italy. Yes, it's true. It really pays to take a friend up on an occasional Egg McMuffin for brunch at McDonald's. I'm Vera Prima, and you are listening to Vera Speaks Out from Florence, Italy. At the moment, we're in the Piazza della Signoria. At both sides of me range bars and shops and stalls, but at the far corner, the portico with all those famous statues, especially the amazing Cellini Perseus. That's the one you always see from behind as a rule. For obvious reasons, girls. I think we ought to head over that way, Norman, don't you think? Don't ask me how Norman got the fare together to come to Italy with us, listeners. I'm glad he made his way, though, so we could come to you from one of my favorite places in the world. You're a pet, Norman. Actually, I invited my friend Linda to accompany me because she's never been to Italy, and they give you tickets for two in your passport to cash, travel and food, or whatever the name is of the latest McDonald's contest. I didn't manage to build a Big Mac when they had that big deal, so aren't I lucky to have had a second chance? Ronald McDonald met me in person at the airport in Rome. I couldn't believe it. It was just as if I were a celebrity. A world celebrity, I mean. I asked Ronald if he would care to join us here in Florence, but he told me that his contract only called for greeting me. That didn't mean he had to become friends or anything. You know, it seems to me Ronald is a diplomat after all. I mean, he introduces heads of state to one another, and most of all, he is the face to the world of McDonald's, a universal institution. Well, it certainly seems to me that, under the circumstances, Ronald could act a little more worldly. I'm still very attracted to him. As my sister Cheryl says, baggy jeans means. I'm not so happy about developments with my friend Linda, though, I can tell you that. She got religious all of a sudden in Rome. That's her story, and she's sticking to it. She only goes to church twice a year, Christmas and Easter. I'm not of the Catholic persuasion myself, but I went to High Mass with Linda once. She embarrassed hell out of me by spreading cheese whiz on the wafer. Well, if she doesn't like things here with me, she can have Rome. I'm not speaking to her. She can find her own way back to Canada. I don't know why I ever asked her to come with me in the first place instead of you, Norman. You can use her return ticket. Yesterday I took Linda to her first visit of the Uffizi. The Uffizi here in Florence is a smaller gallery of paintings than most other world centers of art, but its collection is probably richest overall of any museum anywhere. Most of the collection is 15th and 16th century, obviously, since Florence is sometimes called the cradle of that movement toward a higher civilization called the Renaissance. However, there is the odd job in the collection from a later era. Linda managed to find probably the only Impressionist picture in the whole collection. She had to throw it up to me when I said that the Impressionist El Greco looked like a Raphael to me. She didn't used to have that sneer when she corrected me at home, where we all called her Linda Louvre incidentally. I want to see her in tears on that runway at the airport in Rome, trying to thumb a ride. I've changed hotels on her.
Ay, ma che Madonna!
When in Rome, do as the Romans do, eh, girls? Italian men certainly earn their amorous reputation. It's just too bad that they all start to go bald at 16. Speaking of bald, I should have known better with Linda when I laughed at her hair. You mean you got that thing specially, I said. She got this experimental job on a Renaissance theme from the Vancouver Vocational Institute, where it's free. It turned out kind of bouffant. Her student hairdresser's role model was one of those Quattrocento profile portraits. You know, the ones with the high forehead. Fat girls shouldn't try on high foreheads. Something I didn't know is that Italians often greet you with goodbye. Of course, arrivederci means hello too, but more usually goodbye. But another expression I seem to get quite frequently when I'm either coming or going is atroce. As we Canadians find ourselves caught up in a little tempest over a new constitution, the Arno just keeps on rolling along under the Ponte Vecchio in Florence. Politics is just like hockey, played entirely by thought control. I'm not very informed. Its mysteries are just too slow in unfolding, and anyway, I prefer to wait until it's history. History is when politics has sorted itself all out. However, that said, I have to admit Italy has altogether the messiest story of any country in the world, so I'm not even going to go into that. I'm just looking for the Medici balls hanging from the Signoria, Norman, but I don't see them. Oh, never mind. Here we are, just about in front of the old palazzo with its beautiful tall tower. I was looking for the Medici crest somewhere on the Signoria, because the Medici were a Florentine dynasty that oversaw the whole splendor of the Renaissance. Everything we see around us owes itself to the Medicis one way or another. Just look at that. Did you ever think you'd find yourself gazing up with wonder at a man stark naked, Norman? Yes, right before us now is the proud statue of Perseus by Cellini. Not only that, you just have to turn to your left, and there is the Hercules and a copy of Michelangelo's David. And through the Signoria's portal in the courtyard, you can just glimpse the charming Verrocchio fountain. I'd love to dally a little inside the palazzo, but tempus fugit, as they say in Italy. Instead, I'd like to introduce you to my favorite picture in the Uffizi, which is right next door to the Signoria. I think we should all reconvene inside, don't you, Norman? As we rejoin our listeners in Vancouver, we're now on the third floor of the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, Italy. Probably the most popular room in the gallery is the one we are in right now this minute, the Botticelli room. You know, Norman, they had to knock a wall out to make it bigger. When I came here the first time, there was always a crowd of rabble in here. It was so bad, I used to have to get out my hat pin to see anything. Things are a little better now, as you can see. Nowadays, just your elbows will do. In fact, it's quite unusual to have the place to ourselves alone. Well, if we only have time for one picture, it has to be Botticelli's Primavera, which means spring to us in English. It's very helpful that our guide yesterday was so informative.
Now I can fill you in on all the dope about one of the world's most famous paintings. For instance, did you know that the Primavera was commissioned by Lorenzo de Medici's second cousin? There are so many ways of regarding this work of art that it's bewildering. In the first place, there are 9 figures. It is what is called a conversazione, although no one appears to be doing much talking. From right to left, you have a windy type who's looking black and blue from coughing, followed by a girl in something filmy who is not ideally healthy either. In fact, she's upchucking. She seems to have been eating flowers. Then there's a village maiden who looks about 5 months pregnant. Actually, she looks rather like Ophelia, with that wistful look, that floral print shift, and all those blossoms she's collected. At the center of the painting is Venus. This is particularly interesting. This same girl is just arriving from an ocean voyage in another famous painting just across the room. It was taken just a few minutes before this one. However, in the meantime, she's put on her clothes, as we can see. Next, in the Primavera, there are 3 dancing girls, scantily clad. They're all named Grace for some reason. Finally, we come to the only male figure in the painting. The cherub overhead with the bow and arrow may or may not be a boy, too. But at that age, who cares? I want to pay particular attention to the male figure on the extreme left. He reminds me of my young pal, Robert. Don't you think so, Norman? Art historian Michael Levy, in a Pelican book called High Renaissance, insists that in spite of everything, Botticelli's boys are actually quite butch. Mr. Levy is an authority, so this is the fashionable line on the matter. To me, most of them look like jailbait, as my friend Robert calls himself and his little gay colleagues who work Davy Street at night in the West End of our own Vancouver. The boy in the Primavera is showing a bit of thigh in a very brief wraparound, slit up the side. What with the wand and the tiara and the open-toed shoes, well, if this boy is Mr. Levy's idea of straight, I think his wife had better take him aside for a little chat. I'm sure that many of our listeners are aware that the Vancouver Art Gallery is shifting from its little off-the-street drop-in center on Georgia to the old courthouse nearby. I think the time is ripe to make a competitive bid on this delightful masterpiece. What a draw! You are expected to notice that all of Botticelli's figures are as light as a feather. They really are a confection. But what I like are these little things here on the bottom that, I smudged.
Che cosa stai facendo con questa pittura? A che serve questa macchina? Stop!
Well, what are you doing hanging... What are they doing hanging up a painting that's still wet? How long does it take them to dry anyway? How was I supposed to know it was a riposo the time they all go home for lunch or take a nap or whatever they do? It was easy enough to get in, wasn't it? That lock was so easy to pick, I just thought the door was stuck. They can't talk like that to Vera Prima. Have you got that thing plugged in? Good.
Attenzione italiani di Firenze, sono io, Vera Prima, di Vancouver, Canada.
Vera Canuck is portrayed by Stephanie Brookes.
Just take it from me, I'm just as free as any daughter. I do what I like, just when I like, and how I love it. I'm here to say when I'm loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time.
Vera Speaks Out is produced for Vancouver Co-op Radio by Norman.
Oh!